Hello, happy Thursday. Here's the fear I hear from most CPA farm owners. If I standardize everything, won't my work become generic? Won't I lose the personal touch? Won't quality suffer? And I get it, you build your reputation on being thorough, being thoughtful, being customized. But here's what David Maister discovered after studying the most successful professional firms. The firms with the highest quality are also the most standardized, not in spite of standardization, but because of it. Today we're breaking down how to standardize without killing quality. And I'm going to show you why customization is often inefficiency in disguise. My name is Ephraim Asher, and I help CPA farm owners build firms that work without them. We're in week 7 of this series based on David Maister's book called Managing the Professional Service Firm. And we're doing a deep into the structural work now. A quick recap of last week, which was Monday. We talked about delegation that actually works and why most CPAs fail at it. We identified 3 main delegation failures: delegating the task without the outcome, no context; delegating without training, just abandonment of the task, not delegation; and delegating then micromanaging, and this creates dependency. We covered this framework called trust, training, and tolerance. Trust is built incrementally. Think of a best friend here. You wouldn't trust them with your deepest secret unless they've been your friend for a couple of years. Training teaches people how to think, not just commanding them what to do. Training, basically, you're taking a person through the process of teaching them not what to do, but how to approach a particular task. So that when tasks in the future come like that, and that particular framework of what to do doesn't fit, at least they can approach it from, okay, here's how I approach this particular task. And the last one is tolerance, which means accepting 85% quality when it's acceptable to the client. Acceptable to the client. We broke down the 3 levels of delegation: task, responsibility, and authority. And I gave you a 7-step process for delegation that builds capacity instead of redistributing work. The exercise was to delegate one routine task this week, walk someone through it, give them a checklist, let them do it, then coach them afterwards. This week we are tackling the foundation that makes delegation possible: standardization. Because here is the truth. You can't delegate effectively if every engagement is a custom snowflake. You can't train people if there's no consistent progress. And you can't scale if everything requires reinvention. So today we're breaking down how to build systems that create consistency without sacrificing the judgment and expertise that makes you valuable. So let us start with the elephant in the room. So most CPA owners resist standardization for one big reason. They think standardization means mediocrity. Think that if I use the same process for every client, I'm not being responsive to their unique needs. Or if I use templates and checklists, I'm sacrificing quality for efficiency. And if I systemize everything, I'll lose our zing. I'll lose what makes us, what makes us special. And Maister says that it's actually backwards, because here is the paradox. The firms that deliver the most customized, high-quality client experiences are built on the most standardized processes. How is that possible? Because standardization doesn't mean treating every client the same. It means handling the repeatable parts consistently, so you have time and mental energy for the truly custom parts. Standardization is not about eliminating judgment. It's about preserving judgment for where it actually matters. Think about starting your car early in the morning. If it's custom each time, day 1 it's keyless, day 2 you have to put in the key, day 3 perhaps you have to open the bonnet and pop a button on the engine. No. Let me give you a proper example. When you're preparing a business tax return, what percent of the work is truly custom? Maybe 10 to 20%. The other 90 to 80 is the same every time. whereby you're gathering documents, you entering data, calculating depreciation, checking compliance, reviewing for accuracy, whatnot. That's 90 to 80% should be standardized. Because when it's standardized, you can delegate it, you can train someone to do it, and you can ensure quality. And now this does a beautiful thing. That this frees up you to focus on the 10 to 20% that requires your expertise. Let me go back here. Such things like complex tax planning, strategic conversation with the client, unusual scenarios that require judgment. The goal of standardization is not to eliminate expertise. It's to ensure that expertise gets applied to where it matters most. And here is an uncomfortable truth. So, what most CPA owners call customization is actually just a lack of process. Now, you think you may be responsive, thoughtful, I get it. But often you're just trying to reinvent the wheel. Let me show you what I mean. Take this scenario. Every time you onboard a new client, you send them a custom email explaining what you need, right? Create a new folder structure. Figure out how to organize the documents. Decide who should work on what. Make up the timeline as you go. Tell yourself every client is different. I cannot standardize this. But I want to ask you a question. Is every client truly different? Or are you just treating every client like they're different because you don't have a system? Because this is the reality. 90% of your clients have the same needs. They need the same documents. They need the same communication. They need the same process. And the 10% who are truly different, you can handle them differently. But if you have a standard process for them, the 10% you can handle them differently, and you can handle them only differently if you only have a standard process. For the 90% of the ones who it's just a repeatable process, you know that this when this client calls in, they need tax prep or payroll prep, the same thing all the time, and you have data to track this. Customization without standardization is chaos. You're not being flexible, you're just being, for lack of a better word, disorganized. And disorganized doesn't feel like a problem when you're small. You can find this here, you can find this here. It's good. But when you try to scale, it becomes a nightmare because every new team member has to learn your chaos. And chaos does not scale. So let's revisit the 3 types of work. Remember back in week 2 when we talked about the 3 types of work? Well, standardization applies differently to each type. Now let me show you. The first one is the routine work. This is work that is the same every time. Examples are monthly bookkeeping, payroll processing, routine tax prep, standard reconciliations. This should be 100% standardized. There's no reason this work should vary. You should have at least checklists, templates, standard workflows, clear quality controls. If the work is routine and you don't have a standard process, you're wasting time and introducing unnecessary risk. Every time you do a routine work without a checklist, you rely on your memory, and memory fails. Standardization doesn't. The second type of work is procedural work with judgment. This work has a standard process but requires judgment at certain points. Examples are business tax returns, whereby standard processes but tax planning requires judgment. Financial statement prep, standard process but complex transactions require judgment. Audit work, standard procedures but risk assessment requires judgment. This should be 80-20, whereby 80% is standardized and 20% requires judgment. You standardize the process. You give people the framework and how to think about the process. But you train them on when to escalate, when to apply judgment, and when to ask for help. Standardize the process, train the judgment. Standardize the process, train the judgment. This is where most CPAs fail. You try to standardize the judgment, which doesn't work, or they leave the whole thing unstandardized, which doesn't scale. The answer is standardize what is repeatable and train people on where judgment is needed. The third type of work is custom strategic work. This is work that is truly unique every time. Examples are complex tax planning for a unique situation, M&A, advisory, high-level strategic consulting, or turnaround work. This work should not be standardized. It's custom. But here's the key. Even custom work should have a framework. You don't need a checklist for complex tax planning, but you should have a way to think about the problem, a list of questions to ask, a process of analyzing options, a standard of how you present recommendations. Even the most custom work benefits from structure, and structure is not the enemy of creativity, it's the foundation of it. I like playing music, and I'll say, for example, in drums, there are two notes. Two notes. There's a single note where like pa pa one right left, and there's a double note where it's right or left. And with these combinations, you get drums. It just goes into so many ways, infinite. A piano, the foundation, the structure of a piano is 12 keys from C to C. There's C sharp, D sharp, D flat, all that stuff. Yet, how many songs can you name which sound totally different yet use the same things? And this is what I'm talking about, whereby even the most custom work, the most custom song you've never heard, maybe it came from Zambia or Pennsylvania or Ireland, it benefits from structure because structure is not the enemy of creativity. Structure is the foundation for it. Now, here we're going to cover the 4 layers of standardization. So, how do you actually standardize? And Maister breaks it down into 4 layers. Let's go through them. The first layer is standard processes. This is the workflow, the steps you follow to get work done, i.e., for tax prep, client provides document, staff enters data into system, preparer completes return, reviewer checks for accuracy, partner reviews insights, return is filed. This stuff should be written down. Every person on your team should know this process. And when someone new joins, they learn the process, not by asking you, but by reading the documentation. If your process lives in your head, it can't be delegated. It can only be reinvented. Layer 2, standard tools. These are templates, checklists, and resources you need to execute the process. Examples: client engagement letter template, tax organizer checklist, review checklist, quality control checklist, email templates for common situations. These tools do 2 things. First, they ensure consistency. And second, they speed up the work. You don't have to think about, okay, how should I reply to this? Just copy paste, Control C, Control V. Done. A checklist is not micromanagement, it's insurance against human error. Even the best CPA will forget something occasionally. Checklists ensure that they don't. The third layer is standard communication. This is how you communicate with clients at each stage of the process. Example, your welcome email when you onboard a client, status updates email mid-engagement, completion email when work is done, follow-up email on outstanding items. When communication is standardized, your clients know what to expect. Your team doesn't have to guess what to say. Quality is consistent. Think about how you read news every morning. Perhaps if you watch TV or you get a magazine, and each time they began a section, they'll start with a different section. So if it typically has the format of today's headlines, world news, business news, sports. Tomorrow you find sports is on the first page, then business news, then it just mixed up. You won't quality will be hindered, hampered. Client experience is the sum of 1,000 small interactions. If those interactions are inconsistent, the experience feels chaotic. Standardize the interactions and the experience improves. Because they now know, okay, if this doesn't work, where can I tweak this? It's like you're going out and you're doing the same sum a math equation, and you know that okay, when I now apply this to this formula, this part doesn't hold up. Why doesn't it hold up? And you can tweak it. Okay, like okay, now when it's now flowing, it's not flowing well. Think of a pipe. You have a pipe and water is going through it. And it's easy for you to track that water and see where there's a leakage in the pipe. But if you have no pipe and it just the water is flowing, you never know when it's a leakage or when it's going good. The fourth layer is standardized quality controls. This is how you ensure work meets your standards before it goes to clients. Examples are review checklist, peer review for complex returns, a second partner review for high risk engagements, automated checks in your software. Quality controls ensure that even when someone makes a mistake, it gets caught. Because quality is not about perfection. It's about catching errors before the client sees them. And you can't catch errors if you don't have a system for checking. So, how to standardize without losing flexibility? So, these are concerns that I normally hear. But what if a client doesn't fit the standard process? The answer is simple. You handle them differently. But here's the key. You can only handle exceptions well if you have a standard to deviate from them. Standardization creates the baseline. Flexibility is built on top of it. Think about your office building, whereby you have it's on this high rise, and it's on the 60th floor. You have the foundation of the building that keeps the building firm, secure, keeps the building structure. Flexibility is built on top of it, whereby you can remove offices, you can break down walls within the building to change the layout. That doesn't change the foundation of the building, it just changes how you approach the building. The building is still there, the process is still there, but you are making things inside the building work. You can shift a wall, break a wall, put a chair, remove a glass door. That's flexibility in the building, and that's how standardization works. So let's say you have a standard onboarding process for new clients. Most clients go through the standardization process, but occasionally you'll have a client with unusual needs. Maybe they are in the middle of an audit, or maybe they have international operations, or maybe even they're in a time crunch. You don't force them into the standard process, you adapt. But you adapt from the standard. You adapt from the standard. You know what the standard is, you know where you're deviating, and you know why, and your team knows it too. Without a standard, every client feels like an exception. With a standard, true exceptions are easy to spot and to handle. And this is how you maintain quality while scaling. So what are some benefits of standardization? So here's what you gain, because standardization, let's talk about what you gain, because it's not just about efficiency. The first is a training, whereby when you have a standard process, training is straightforward. You're not explaining what to do differently for every client. You're teaching. Here's how we do this. Follow this process. And Maister's principle here is standardization turns expertise into transferable knowledge. And transferable knowledge is how you build capacity. Think about the time you are onboarding, or you are part of an onboarding process, and it was all clunky, messy. No one really knows what to do, because say the previous person has been in the role for a long time, and it all revolved around them. Once they left, there was a huge gap that had to be filled. They never really knew what the person did, and the person coming back to explain it also work. So it's tough. Other thing is better quality control. When work is standardized, you can spot deviations. If every tax return follows the same process and one doesn't, you know something is wrong. But if every tax return is different, how do you know if it's just wrong or custom? Consistency makes errors visible. Third one, faster execution. When people don't have to reinvent the process every time, they move faster. They're not spending mental energy figuring out what to do next. They're executing. Standardization reduces decision fatigue. People can focus on doing the work instead of figuring out how to do the work. Fourth benefit, it's easier to scale, and this is the big one. You can't scale chaos, but you can scale systems. When you standardize, you can hire more people, take on more clients, expand services, open new locations, all without the firm collapsing under its own complexity. Meister's insight is firms that can scale successfully are built on systems, not heroic. So let's make this practical. Here is how to standardize without getting overwhelmed. First, pick one repeatable process. Don't try to standardize everything at once. Pick one thing you do repeatedly, whether it's client onboarding, monthly bookkeeping, business tax prep, engagement letter process. Choose one that happens most frequently, creates the most confusion, takes up the most time, and that's where you get the biggest ROI. Second, document the current process. Don't design the perfect process from scratch. Start documenting what you already do. Write down every step. Who does it? What will you use? How long it takes? What done looks like. Just capture the reality first. You can't improve what you don't document. Third, identify what standard versus what requires judgment. Go through your documented processes and label each step. S as standard, every time. G as judgment, whereby requires thinking or expertise. S should be standard. S step should be standardized completely. The J step should have guidance on when to escalate or how to think about the decision. 4. Create tools. Now build the tools to support this process, like checklists for the standard steps, templates for common communications, guidelines for the judgment steps. Make them simple, make them usable. A simple checklist that gets used is better than a perfect system that gets ignored. The fifth is train your team on it. Walk your team through the new process. Show them the checklist. Explain when to use it. Answer questions. Let them use it. Then ask for feedback, because the best systems are co-created. If your team has input, they actually use it. Sixth, iterate. The first version won't be better, and it's okay. Use it, see what works, see what doesn't, improve it. Standardization is not a one-time event. It's not like you were created, now go. No, it's a continuous improvement process. Version 1 is better than no system, and version 2 will be better than version 1. Just start. Just start. Just start. Now here's the mindset shift. So after all we've talked about, here is what it really comes down to. Most CP farm owners think that standardization limits them, but the opposite is true. Standardization doesn't limit your expertise, it multiplies it. When you standardize the routine work, you free yourself to focus on the complex work. When you standardize the process, you empower your team to execute without you. When you standardize quality controls, you ensure consistency even when you're not involved. Standardization is not about becoming a factory. It's about building a farm where great work happens reliably, not randomly. I like that one. It's about building a farm where great work happens reliably, not randomly. And that's what clients actually want. They don't want customization for its own sake. They want their work done well, on time, and consistently. Standardization is how you deliver that. So let's lock in what we've covered today. We are week 7, standardization without killing quality. We talked about the standardization paradox. The firm that delivers the most the firm that deliver the most customized high quality experiences are built on the most standardized processes. Standardization does not eliminate judgment, it preserves judgment for where it matters. Customization is often just inefficiency. So what most CP owners call customization is just a lack of process. You're reinventing the wheel, not being responsive. 90% of clients have the same needs. Standardized for the 90, customized for the 10. Three types of work through the standardization lens. The routine work. Here, like checklist templates, 100% should be standardized. Procedural work, here you apply a bit of judgment, like complex tax returns and whatnot. Standardize 80, 20% requires judgment. And here's now the custom strategic work. Here, come up with a framework. Don't standardize, but think of how to approach this problem. If it's something like what questions should be asked, how should I, if this thing happens, okay, what steps do I follow into thinking about this particular issue? 4 layers of standardization: standard processes, the workflow, standard tools, the templates, checklist, resources, standard communication, client touch points, standard quality controls, how you catch errors, flexibility within standardization. So, standardization creates the baseline. Flexibility is built on top of it. You can only handle exceptions well if you have a standard to deviate from. So, some of the hidden benefits of standardization are easier training, better quality control, faster execution, easier to scale. So how you start standardizing is pick one repeatable process, document the current process, identify what standard, what requires versus what requires judgment, create the tools, checklists, templates, train your team to improve on it, iterate and improve. Now, the mindset shift is standardization doesn't limit your expertise, it multiplies it. Clients don't want customization for its own sake, they want consistency, quality, and reliability. Standardization is how you deliver that at scale. Because at most, I have said this in this video, you cannot scale chaos. Only systems scale. And to get a good system, it's standardized. Next week, we're going to cover a topic that hits close to home for every farm, for every CPA owner. The hidden cost of, I'll just do it myself. Because here is the reality. Every time you say, I'll just handle this one, you think you're being efficient. But Maister says that you're actually making one of the most expensive decisions you can ever make. Now, you may not know you obviously know much about money, and that's quite a lot of money right there. So next week we're going to be breaking down the true cost of doing work yourself, and I bet you it's not what you think. Opportunity cost versus immediate cost. Faster now, how faster now creates trap later. Math that proves why your billable hour is not your most valuable hour. And this is going to challenge how you think about your time. So, and it might make you uncomfortable, but that's okay. It's necessary if you want to build a firm that works without you. So, your exercise for this week is pick one repeatable process: client onboarding, monthly bookkeeping, tax prep, whatever that is most repeatable in your firm takes most of the time in your firm. Document it. Document every step, then create a simple checklist for it. Just one process, just one checklist. And that's how it starts. All right. Thanks for watching. Now, go and build your system.